The twin suns of Raltheris burned low on the horizon, casting molten light across the crystal spires of the alien capital. Captain Elias Ward stepped off the landing platform, his boots clicking against polished obsidian. The air was warm, but the tension was colder than space itself. For 5 years, humans and the Raltheri Empire had been locked in a war neither side truly wanted. Now, for the first time, peace was within Rekif. He didn't ruin it tonight. Elias had been chosen as the human envoy because he was careful, patient, and trusted to follow orders. The council had made it clear. One wrong word, one cultural mistake, and they could all be back in the trenches. He'd spent the entire day in the Grand Negotiation Hall, exchanging measured words with alien ministers who seemed more like predators than diplomats. By the time the session ended, his mind felt like it had been squeezed dry. 2 royal guards escorted him down the winding corridors toward his guest quarters. The walls glimmered faintly with embedded crystals, pulsing like veins. Elias couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in the guards' posture: shoulders tense, eyes shifting. Something about the way they walked made him uneasy. When they reached the door, they bowed stiffly and left without a word. Elias keyed the panel, stepped inside, and froze. There, in the center of his room, stood a young alien woman. She was tall, her skin smooth and shimmering like polished bronze. Long white hair flowed down her back, and her golden eyes locked onto him with an expression somewhere between curiosity and challenge. And she was completely naked. Elias said carefully, trying to keep his gaze at eye level, "I think you're in the wrong room." "I am exactly where I am meant to be," she replied, her voice calm and melodic. "You are Captain Elias Ward, human envoy to the Raltheri. I am Princess Vera, daughter of the High Sovereign." That name hit him like a punch. He had seen her earlier in the royal box, watching the negotiations with unreadable eyes. Now she was here, in his room, without a single piece of clothing. "This is highly irregular," Elias managed. "The talks are delicate enough without this as part of the peace ceremony," Vera interrupted. "A bond of trust is formed when 2 leaders stand as they were born, without barriers, without lies." She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the polished floor. "It is how my people know the truth of the other's heart." Elias' mind raced. In the war briefings, nothing had been said about this kind of ritual. If this was real, refusing could insult her entire culture. If it was a trick, accepting could destroy the treaty and his career in one move. "Look," Elias said, holding up his hands. "I'm sure your customs are important. But maybe we should discuss this." Vera tilted her head. "Is the human afraid?" "I'm cautious," he corrected. "Where I come from, situations like this often mean someone is trying to get me killed or married." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "Sometimes they mean both." Before Elias could reply, there was a faint sound outside, boots on the corridor floor, moving closer. Vera's gaze sharpened. "You should decide quickly," she whispered. "The guards will be here soon, and they will not understand hesitation." He glanced at the door. If they walked in now, they would see him with a naked princess in his quarters. There would be no explaining it away. The rumor would spread like wildfire, and the peace talks would be over before sunrise. "What do you expect me to do?" he asked quietly. "Show that you trust me," Vera said simply. "Or let me walk out, and trust will be lost forever." The boots outside stopped. Silence fell. Elias' heart pounded as he realized he had only seconds to make a choice. The sound of boots outside the door was like a clock ticking down to disaster. Elias stood frozen, his mind racing. He had been trained to handle tense talks, sudden betrayals, even assassination attempts, but no one had prepared him for a naked alien princess standing in his quarters. Vera didn't flinch. She moved with calm grace, her golden eyes never leaving his face. "Captain Ward," she said in a quiet voice, "if you believe peace matters, then you will follow the custom. You will stand with me as one who hides nothing." Elias' throat felt dry, and if I don't, she stepped closer until the faint heat of her skin reached him. "Then when the story spreads, and it will, my people will say, you rejected. Trust, they will call you a coward. The ministers already looking for reasons to destroy the treaty will have their excuse." Outside, the boots shifted. There were whispers in a sharp alien language. Elias didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable, curious, suspicious, waiting. He turned back to Vera. "You came here on purpose." "Yes," she admitted without hesitation. "I came because others wanted this meeting to fail. If I had sent for you, they would have stopped you. So I came to you instead. This way, the choice is yours alone." That honesty almost startled him more than her presence. Elias had dealt with enough alien royalty to know they were rarely so direct. Most spoke in riddles, always keeping their true thoughts hidden. Vera, on the other hand, had stripped away both her clothes and her words. The boots started moving again, this time toward the door. Elias didn't know if they meant to knock or burst in. Either way, the image they would see would decide the fate of the talks. Elias made his choice. He pulled off his jacket in one smooth motion and dropped it on the bed. "Fine," he said, "but I'm trusting you to mean what you say." Vera's gaze softened for the first time. "I do." By the time the door slid open, Elias stood beside her, his shirt folded over the chair, boots set neatly to the side. The guards froze in the doorway. Their eyes flicked from the princess to him, then back to the princess. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Vera tilted her chin toward them. "You may leave. The bonding has begun." The guards didn't argue. They stepped back and sealed the door. Only when they were gone did Elias let out the breath he'd been holding. "Bonding," he muttered. "Care to explain exactly what that means?" Vera walked to the low table in the corner. She picked up a small metal pitcher and poured a shimmering blue liquid into 2 crystal cups. "In my people's way, bonding is the first act of peace between 2 leaders. It means you are willing to face one another without barriers. No weapons, no armor, no lies. And no clothes," Elias said. Her lips twitched faintly. "Clothing is a kind of armor, is it not?" She handed him one of the cups. "You drink, I drink, and the ritual is sealed." Elias stared at the liquid. "And if I drink, what happens?" "The ministers will see that you accept our ways. The people will believe you are trustworthy. And the treaty will have a chance to survive. And if I don't drink." Her gaze didn't waver. "Then they will say the human fears the truth." Elias sighed. He hated feeling trapped. But the way she said it there was no threat in her voice, only certainty. This wasn't about seduction or scandal for her. This was about survival, maybe for both their worlds. He raised the cup and took a sip. The drink was cool, sweet at first, then sharp like ice on the tongue. Vera drank after him, her eyes never leaving his. "There," she said. "It is done." Elias set down the cup. "Good. Now can we talk about why I think half your court wants me dead?" For the first time, her expression darkened. She sat across from him, her bare legs folded beneath her. "Because peace threatens their power. They profit from war supplies, weapons, territory taken from your people. If the treaty passes, they lose everything." Elias leaned forward. "Then why risk your own position by coming here? If they find out, they already—" "No," she interrupted. "But they will not act openly. Not yet. They will watch and wait for a mistake." Elias rubbed his temples. "You mean my mistake?" "Yes." she said simply. "That is why you must not give them one." They spoke for nearly an hour, mapping out the factions in the Rothery court, the ministers who supported the treaty and those who would do anything to stop it. Vera's knowledge was precise, dangerous, the kind of detail she should not have been sharing with an outsider. When she finally rose to leave, she paused at the door. "Tomorrow, the ministers will ask if the bonding took place. You must say yes. They will test you to see if you speak the truth, and if they find out we didn't, they will never know," she said. "Because tonight, in their eyes, we did." With that, she was gone. Elias sat alone, the room suddenly feeling colder without her presence. He knew this was far from over. If anything, the game had just begun. The next morning, the grand negotiation hall glittered with crystal light. Alien. Ministers in flowing robes took their seats, their jewel-bright eyes watching him closely. The High Sovereign sat on the raised throne, his expression unreadable. And to his right, dressed in regal gold and silver, sat Princess Vera, composed, serene, and very much not naked. The first minister rose. "Captain Ward," he said, in the sharp, formal cadence of their language, "we have heard that the bonding between you and Her Highness took place last night. Is this true?" Every eye in the hall was on him. Elias kept his expression calm. "It is true." The murmur that followed was like a wave rolling through the chamber. Some voices sounded surprised, others pleased, others tense. Elias saw a few ministers exchange glances that could have meant anything. The High Sovereign leaned forward slightly. "Then the first step of peace has been taken. Let us see if the second will follow." Vera's gaze met Elias for the briefest moment. There was no smile, no signal, just a steady, silent reminder that he had stepped into a game where the rules were written in shadows. As the talks resumed, Elias began to notice things he hadn't before. Certain ministers would glance toward Vera when speaking to him, as if trying to read her reaction. Others would ask him questions that seemed harmless, but he could tell they were designed to catch him in a contradiction. Vera never interrupted, but once or twice. Her eyes narrowed, warning him that a question was a trap. By midday, Elias was sure of one thing: if the peace talk succeeded, it would not be because both sides wanted peace. It would be because he and Vera managed to outplay the people who didn't. When the session finally ended, Vera approached him as the ministers filed out. Her voice was low enough that only he could hear. "Tonight, the rumors will spread faster. Some will say, 'We are now joined by more than a treaty.' Let them." Elias frowned. "And what happens when they start expecting more than just talk?" Vera's golden eyes held his without blinking. "Then we decide if we want to give it to them more, use their own game against them." By the next morning, the whispers had already begun. Captain Elias Ward could feel them following him through the corridors of the Rothery Palace like shadows that wouldn't let go. The servants stopped speaking when he passed. Guards eyed him longer than they needed to. Ministers who had barely acknowledged him before now looked him over with thin, knowing smiles. It didn't take a genius to guess what they were whispering about: the bonding with Princess Vera had been confirmed in the negotiation hall the day before, but confirmation wasn't enough for gossip. No, gossip needed to grow, to twist into something bigger than the truth. And here, in the high crystal corridors of alien politics, the truth was the smallest piece of the story. By midday, Elias overheard one servant murmur. He claimed her as he passed. Another, in a hushed voice, said, "The princess chose him over her own kind." Elias forced himself to walk as if he hadn't heard. In the human fleet, rumors were annoying. In the Rothery court, rumors could kill. The day's negotiations were tense. The ministers didn't argue as openly as before, but their questions had changed. One asked Elias, "When the bonding is complete, will you represent human interests from within the royal family? Another leaned forward and said, "It is a rare honor for a human to be chosen by our princess. Surely, this must mean you are loyal to her above all else." It was a trap. Elias could see it in the way they waited for his answer. If he said yes, they would claim he had chosen the princess over his own people. If he said no, they would say he had insulted her and rejected their custom. Elias kept his voice even. "I am loyal to peace above all else. That is what we are here to build." Some ministers nodded. Others exchanged sharp looks. From the throne, the high sovereign remained still, his gaze unreadable. But Elias noticed his fingers tapping slowly against the armrest, as if he too was weighing what all these whispers might mean after the session. Vera found him in the side gardeny place of tall crystal flowers that shimmered in the wind. "You are handling the questions well," she said quietly. "But the rumors are faster than we thought." "I noticed," Elias replied. "Some of them are already talking like I've moved into the royal palace." Her golden eyes held his. "They want you tied to me in the public mind." "It serves them? And what about you?" Elias asked. "Does it serve you?" Vera didn't answer right away. She brushed her fingers over one of the crystal petals, making it hum softly. "For now, yes. They cannot attack you without attacking me. And there are those who will think twice before striking at the High Sovereign's daughter." "That's protection," Elias said. "But it's also a trap." Her gaze sharpened. "I know. The question is whether you can walk the edge without falling." Elias looked around the garden. No guards were close enough to hear, but he still kept his voice low. "You're telling me some of your own people want to use this? Whatever they think happened, to push me into a role I didn't agree to." "Yes," she said. "A political marriage would give them an excuse to reshape the treaty. They could demand human concessions in exchange for keeping the bond. They could claim that humans are now part of the royal house and must obey its laws." "And you?" Elias asked, her lips curved, but there was no humor in it. "I will not be anyone's pawn. Not theirs, not yours. But for now, we can let them think what they wish." That night, the palace held a formal feast to honor the progress of the talks. Elias had no doubt it was really to see how he and Vera behaved in public together. The great hall glittered with light from hundreds of floating orbs. The long tables were covered in dishes, both beautiful and dangerous looking. Alien music, deep and resonant, filled the air. When Elias entered, all eyes turned to him and then to Vera, who was already standing near the High Sovereign's table. She wore flowing silver garments that caught the light, and a thin crown of crystal rested on her white hair. She didn't wait for him to approach. She crossed the hall and took his arm in front of everyone. The hum of voices grew louder. "You should know," she murmured, "that by standing with me here, you are confirming what they believe," I guessed, Elias said. "But if I refused, it would be worse." "Yes," she agreed. The meal was a test from start to finish. Ministers asked them questions as if they were already a united front. Servants poured wine with exaggerated smiles. More than once, Elias caught the sharp-eyed court historian sketching in the corner, recording every gesture, every glance between him and the princess. At one point, a minister raised his cup and said, "To the human who now stands at the princess's side, may your union bring lasting peace." Elias raised his own cup without hesitation. "May our worlds find a future without war." The minister smiled thinly, as if he'd hoped for a different answer. Later, when the feast ended, Elias walked Vera back toward her chambers. The corridors were quieter now, the light dimmer. Somewhere behind them, faint laughter echoed from the hall. "You handled it well," Vera said. "They wanted you to speak for yourself alone, not for both our peoples." You didn't give them. That they're going to keep trying, Elias said. Yes, she agreed. And soon they will try harder. They stopped outside her door. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Vera said, "Tomorrow, the Council of War will meet with you. Some will pretend to seek your opinion. Some will try to provoke you into anger. If you lose control, they will use it against you." Elias nodded slowly. "And if I don't lose control?" Her lips curved slightly. "Then they will respect you. Or fear you. Either is useful." She turned to go inside, then paused. "Be careful tonight, Captain Ward. Not all whispers are harmless." Elias didn't make it far before he learned exactly what she meant, as he walked toward his own quarters. A figure stepped out from the shadows, tall alien male with skin like dark steel and eyes like molten silver. "You should leave," the stranger said without preamble. "Return to your ship. This place is not safe for you." Elias kept his voice calm. "If you think I scare easily, you haven't met many humans." The alien's expression didn't change. "You are being used. They will bind you to the princess, and then they will bind your people to her family's rule. You will not be a negotiator. You will be a symbol, and symbols can be destroyed when they are no longer useful." "Who sent you?" Elias asked. "No. One who will admit it," the alien said. "But remember this. Every step you take with her brings you closer to a place you cannot return from." And then he was gone, slipping back into the shadows like he'd never been there. When Elias reached his quarters, he found a sealed envelope on the table. Inside was a single strip of crystal, etched with a few alien words he could just barely translate. "Some of us want peace. Do not trust those who smile too much." He stared at it for a long time, then set it down. The palace was a maze of politics and whispers. And now he knew someone else was moving pieces behind the scenes. Someone who wasn't on Vera's side. Someone who wasn't on his, either. And tomorrow, he'd be sitting in a room with all of them. The Council of War chamber was nothing like the grand negotiation hall. It was darker, smaller, built in a circle, with no windows, as if to remind everyone that what was said inside stayed inside. The walls were covered in carved battle scenes, raw theory victories etched in gleaming metal. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center, feeling the weight of every gaze. Around him, the council members sat in high-backed chairs, each wearing robes marked with symbols of rank. The High Sovereign was absent. This meeting was informal, which meant dangerous. Vera had warned him over breakfast. "Some will speak to you as if you are an ally. Some will speak to you as if you are the enemy. Neither is the truth." The first counselor to speak was an older male with skin the color of burnished copper. His voice was deep, heavy. "Captain Ward, tell us, how many ships does your fleet keep near our borders?" Elias kept his tone neutral. "Enough to defend our people. No more." A younger counselor leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "And if the treaty fails, how quickly could those ships strike our worlds?" "That's not why I'm here," Elias said calmly. "The treaty exists, so no one needs to ask that question." Again, murmurs passed through the chamber, some approving, some doubtful. Then a counselor with silver skin and black eyes spoke. "We hear the princess has chosen to bond with you. That makes you part of the royal line in the eyes of the people. Should the treaty fail, will you fight for us?" Elias could feel the trap closing. If he said yes, the humans would see it as betrayal. If he said no, the Raw Three would see it as rejecting their princess. He chose his words carefully. "I will fight for peace. Always. If we build it together, I will defend it with my life." The silver-skinned counselor leaned back, unreadable. The questioning went on for hours. Some of it was about military readiness, some about the details of the treaty, But Elias knew the real purpose wasn't information. It was to see how far they could push him before he cracked. When the meeting ended, he felt like he'd been walking a tightrope over fire. As he stepped out into the corridor, Vera was waiting. She moved toward him quickly, her expression tense. "They tested you," she said, "and you passed for now. But you've also made enemies." "I've been making those since I landed," Elias replied. "Anything new?" "Yes," she said quietly. "One of the counselors sent an assassin, too." "Your quarters last night." Elias stopped walking. "You're telling me this now?" "I stopped them," Vera said. "But it will not be the last attempt. The bonding protects you in public. In private, it does not." Elias studied her face. "Why are you doing this, Vera? You barely know me." She met his gaze without flinching. "Because I know what war does. My people do not believe it, but I have seen it up close. I will not watch it burn both our worlds again." Her voice was steady, but he caught something in her eyes, flicker of pain she didn't let linger. That night, the palace held another reception, smaller than the feast, but just as dangerous. Ministers and military leaders mingled, speaking in low voices. Elias stayed close to the walls, scanning the room. Vera appeared beside him, wearing a deep crimson gown that shimmered like firelight. She didn't look at him when she spoke. "Do you see the tall male near the fountain?" Elias followed her gaze. The man was dressed in black, his silver eyes cold. "That is Lord Kirith," she said. "He commands the fleet that still raids. Your border, he hates the treaty. If it fails, he gains more power." "Then why is he here?" Elias asked. "To see you, to measure you, and perhaps to end you." Elias gave her a sideways glance, comforting thought. She didn't smile. "Stay near me tonight. If you leave my side, you will be surrounded before you can draw breath." Sure enough, Lord Kirith approached within minutes. His voice was smooth but carried a dangerous edge. "Captain Ward, I hear you have been welcomed by our princess." "I've been treated with respect," Elias said evenly. "Respect," Kirith repeated, as if testing the word. "Tell me, does your kind understand what it means to be bound to ours?" "I understand that peace requires trust," Elias said. "And that trust takes time." Kirith's smile was thin. "Time is not always given. Sometimes it must be taken." Elias didn't answer. He just met the man's eyes until Kirith finally stepped back. Vera's hand brushed lightly against Elias' arm, a small signal to move away. They walked toward the balcony, away from listening ears. "You saw it," she said. "He wanted to provoke you. If you had risen to it, he would have used it as proof you cannot control yourself." Elias exhaled slowly. "Feels like I'm walking through a minefield blindfolded." "You are," Vera said. "And some of those mines are people I have known since I was a child." When the reception ended, Elias returned to his quarters, under heavy guard. The guards were Vera's choice, not the sovereign's, and Elias trusted them slightly more than the rest. He stepped inside, and the door sealed. But something felt wrong immediately. The air smelled faintly metallic, sharp. He scanned the room, and his gaze caught on the bed. There, lying across the sheets, was a dagger. Its blade was coated in a thin, dark sheen that shimmered in the light. "Poison." A small crystal note lay beside it. The words were in the Rothari language, but he'd learned enough to read them. 1. Warning only. Leave, or you will not wake. Elias sat down at the desk, staring at the dagger. It wasn't just a threat, it was a message to let him know. His enemies could get this close whenever they wanted. The next morning, Vera came to see him before the talks. When she saw the dagger on the table, her jaw tightened. "They are getting bolder," she said. "They want me scared," Elias replied. Not going to happen. Her gaze softened for just a moment. Fear is not weakness if it keeps you alive, but pride will get you killed. Then tell me how to win, Elias said. Veyra leaned closer, lowering her voice. By making them believe killing you will cost them more than keeping you alive. By making the people believe the treaty is already part of their future. If they destroy you, they destroy that future. Elias nodded slowly. So we turn their own people against them. Yes, she said, but it will take more than words. That day's negotiations were even sharper than before. The hostile ministers began pushing for amendments to the treaty changes that would give the Ralthari more control over trade routes, technology, and territory. Elias refused each one with calm reasoning, always pointing back to fairness and equality. It wasn't easy. He could feel the tension rising in the hall like a storm about to break. When the session ended, he left with Vera. Outside, she said quietly, they are setting the stage. Soon they will offer you one choice, accept their terms, or accept the bond in truth. Elias stopped walking. You mean marriage? Vera met his eyes. Yes. In their minds, if you become my mate, they own your loyalty, and through you, the humans. And if I refuse, then they will claim the treaty is broken, and the war will return. That night, Elias stood on his balcony, looking out at the twin moons. Somewhere in the city below, people were celebrating the hope of peace. They didn't know how close it was to falling apart. Behind him, Vera stepped into the light. Wearing the ceremonial silver cloak of her house, they will force the question. Soon, she said. Elias turned to her. Then we'd better have an answer ready. Her golden eyes studied him. And what will it be? He didn't answer right away. The trap was tightening, and he knew whatever choice he made would change not only his life, but the fate of both their worlds. The council chamber was packed, not just with ministers and military leaders this time, but with representatives from the public merchants, guild leaders, even members of the worker castes. The High Sovereign had called this a day of truth, and every Rothari in the city seemed to be listening. Captain Elias Ward stood beside Princess Vera at the center. A low hum of voices filled the air, the sound of hundreds waiting to see history happen. The High Sovereign's voice carried across the chamber. Today, we decide the fate of peace. The Council has agreed on two paths for Captain Ward. One, sign the treaty as it stands and accept its demands. Two, bind himself to my daughter through the ancient rite, making the bond between our peoples unbreakable. The crowd reacted instantly. Some cheered the second option. Others shouted protests. Elias kept his expression calm. But inside, he felt the weight of the choice pressing on him. If he signed the treaty as the council wanted, it would give the Rothari more control over human trade and territory. If he agreed to the bond, it would lock him and possibly all humans into the royal family's power. Vera's voice was low, only for him. This is what I warned you about. They've cornered you, I noticed. Elias said quietly. Any advice? Yes, she said. Choose the path that keeps both sides from thinking they've won completely. And be ready for someone to make sure you don't choose at all. Elias gave her a sharp look, but before he could answer, the High Sovereign raised his hand for silence. Captain Ward, the Sovereign said, you may speak. Elias stepped forward. I came here to make peace, not to give up my peoples. Future, the treaty must be fair, or it will fail. And as for the bond, the next moment was chaos. A sharp crack split the air. Something hissed past his ear and shattered against the crystal wall behind him. Guards shouted, drawing weapons. The crowd surged in panic. Elias dropped low, scanning the upper balconies. A shadow moved near one of the pillars, and a glint of metal caught the light. Up there, he shouted. The guards reacted, but not fast enough. The assassin leaped from the balcony, aiming straight for Elias with a long, curved blade. Before Elias could draw his sidearm, Vera moved. She stepped in front of him, her ceremonial cloak swirling, and caught the assassin's wrist with one hand. With the other, she drove a knee into his midsection hard enough to make him drop the blade. The guards swarmed, dragging the attacker away. The crowd's noise turned from panic to shocked whispers, and through it all, Vera didn't take her eyes off Elias. "You see," she said quietly, "they will kill you rather than let you decide freely." The High Sovereign called for order, his voice like thunder. "This attack is an insult to the Council, to the peace talks, and to my family. Captain Ward, Princess Verrier's safety is now the concern of the entire court." The ministers nodded. Some sincerely, some only because they had to. Elias took a breath and stepped forward again. "If there are those who would rather see me dead than see peace, then that is all the more reason to make sure peace happens." He turned to face the crowd directly. "I will not sign a treaty that takes from one side to give to the other. And I will not be forced into a bond as a tool for politics. But I will stand with Princess Vera to finish what we started on terms we both choose." The reaction was mixed cheers from some, angry murmurs from others, but no one could say. He had picked one side completely. Vera's golden eyes met his. She gave the smallest nod. After the chamber cleared, Elias and Vera walked together down a quieter corridor. Guards followed at a distance. "That was risky," she said. "You denied both options they gave you. Seemed like the only way." "To keep breathing," Elias replied. Vara's lips curved faintly. "You may have bought us time, but now they will push harder. And the next attack will not be so obvious." Elias glanced at her. "You keep saying us. You really mean that?" "Yes," she said simply. "I've already chosen to stand with you. I don't take that back." For a moment, they walked in silence. Then Vera added, "But you must understand, but they cannot control you. They will try to control me. And if they cannot control either of us, they will look for a way to remove us both." Elias gave a short nod. "Then we make. It's so removing us means destroying their own chance at peace." That night, the palace was locked down. Extra guards patrolled the halls. Elias stayed in his quarters, going over the treaty terms again, looking for points he could use to force a fairer deal. Just after midnight, a soft knock came at the door. When he opened it, Vera stepped inside, wearing plain black clothes instead of royal garments. "We don't have much time," she said. "There's a meeting in the lower halls tonight without the sovereign. The ministers who hate the treaty will be there. If we listen, we might learn what they plan next." Elias didn't need convincing. Within minutes, they were moving quietly through the dim corridors, using side passages to avoid the patrols. They stopped outside a narrow door. Voices carried through the thin metal. "The human must not leave this planet alive," one voice said. "Agreed," another replied. "If the princess keeps protecting him, she will share his fate. We can make it look like an accident," a third voice suggested. "An explosion during the signing ceremony." Elias felt Vera tense beside him. Her hand closed into a fist. They listened for several more minutes, long enough to hear them set the date 2 days from now. Back in Elias's quarters, Vera paced, her movements sharp. "Now you see, they will not stop. The treaty is just a stage for them. The real game is power, and they don't care who dies in the process." Elias leaned against the desk. "Then we make our own move before they make theirs." She stopped pacing. "You have a plan." "Yes," he said. "We don't wait for the signing ceremony. We hold it tomorrow. Surprise them before they can act." Her eyes narrowed. "That will anger them." "Good," Elias said. "If they're angry, they'll make mistakes." And while they're off balance, we lock the treaty in place on our terms. Vera studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll arrange it. But we will need to make a public show of unity stronger than anything we've done before. Are you ready for that? Elias met her gaze without hesitation. I am, if you are. The next day, the palace buzzed with news of the sudden ceremony. Ministers were caught off guard, scrambling to prepare. The grand hall filled quickly, every seat taken. The High Sovereign looked surprised, but allowed the event to proceed, perhaps, curious to see what Elias and Vera were doing. When they stood together before the assembled court, Vera's voice rang clear. Today, we end the games. The treaty will be signed now, without secret changes, without hidden traps. And it will be defended by both our peoples equally. Elias added, and if anyone here still believes war is the better path, I say this, neither of us will allow it. The hall erupted in a storm of voices, but Elias could see the shift in the crowd. The people wanted an end to the war. And now they were watching two leaders stand side by side, refusing to bow to pressure. The hostile ministers would still plot. But today, Elias and Vera had seized the ground beneath their feet. The grand hall was brighter than Elias had ever seen it. Every crystal wall glowed with soft golden light. The long ceremonial table had been set with the treaty documents, sealed, in shining metal cases. Guards lined the walls in full armor, their long spears reflecting the light. But Elias could feel its attention. Beneath the beauty, the hostile ministers were scattered among the crowd, speaking in low voices. Some gave him polite nods. Others didn't bother to hide their dislike. Princess Vera stood beside him, wearing the silver cloak of her house. Her face was calm, but he could see the faint tightness around her eyes. They'll try something, she said quietly. Be ready. I'm ready, Elias replied. Are you? Her golden eyes met his. Always. The High Sovereign rose from his throne and addressed the hall. Today, we end a war that has taken too much from both sides. The treaty will be signed by Captain Elias Ward of the Terran Fleet and Princess Vera of the Ralthari Empire, binding our peoples to peace. The crowd applauded, but Elias noticed not everyone joined in. Lord Kirith, the silver-eyed fleet commander, sat perfectly still. His gaze locked on Elias like a predator waiting for the right moment. Vera leaned closer. He's watching you. That means he's planning something. Elias didn't take his eyes off the hall. Then we make him wait. They stepped forward to the ceremonial table. A servant brought out the signing instruments, long, thin styluses tipped with crystal. Elias picked his up and glanced at the treaty text, making sure the terms were exactly as agreed. They were, he signed. Then Vera signed beside him, her movements slow and deliberate so the crowd could see. The applause was louder this time, but it didn't last. A sudden crash echoed through the hall. One of the tall crystal pillars at the far end shattered, shards spraying across the floor. Guards shouted. A figure emerged from the dust, a tall Ralthari in black armor, holding a long, glowing blade. Elias recognized the stance instantly. This wasn't an assassin sent for stealth. This was a public executioner. The man's voice rang out. This treaty is a lie. The human cannot be trusted. He has seduced our princess and seeks to control our empire. Gasps and shouts filled the hall. Elias saw ministers exchanging sharp looks, some shocked, some almost pleased. Vera stepped forward. This is madness. Stand down, or the man moved faster than most could follow, swinging the blade toward her. Elias didn't think he moved. He caught her around the waist, pulling her clear, the blade slicing the air where she had been standing a heartbeat earlier. Guards rushed in, but the attacker fought with brutal skill, cutting down two before they could close. The crowd surged back, panic spreading. Elias drew his sidearm. "Cover me," he shouted to the nearest guards. He charged forward, firing low to force the attacker back. The man blocked one shot with his blade, the crystal tip sparking as it deflected the energy. Elias ducked under the next swing and slammed his shoulder into the man's chest, driving him back toward the broken pillar. The attacker snarled and twisted, trying to bring the blade down. Elias caught his wrist and held it, feeling the strength in the alien's arm like iron cables. "Who sent you?" Elias demanded. The man's eyes burned. "Your death will save us all." He shoved Elias away, but before he could strike again, Vera stepped in. She moved with sharp, precise speed, her palm striking the man's neck. His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Silence fell over the hall. Guards dragged the attacker away, and the High Sovereign rose again, his voice thundering. "This insult will not be forgotten. The treaty stands. And let all here know those who attack its guardians attack me." It was a strong declaration, but Elias knew it wouldn't be enough. The ministers who hated the treaty wouldn't stop. This was just one strike in a larger war of shadows. Vera turned to him, her voice low. "They wanted you dead in front of everyone. They failed. Now they will try something else." Elias nodded. "We have to get ahead of them." That night, they met in a smaller council chamber, away from the main halls. Only a few trusted guards stood watch. Elias spread the treaty documents across the table. "The only way this holds is if the people believe in it more than the council fears it. Right now, they still see me as an outsider who could leave any time. If they believed I was tied to this world permanently..." Vera's gaze sharpened. "You mean the bond?" "Yes," Elias said. "If we make it public and voluntary, the council loses their weapon. They can't accuse us of hiding anything. They can't say I was forced, and the people will defend the treaty as much as they defend you." Vera was silent for a moment. "You understand what that means in my culture? Once the bond is made, it is for life." "I understand," Elias said. "The question is, do you want that?" Her eyes held his, steady and searching. "I want peace. And if this is the way to get it, I will do it. But I will not force you." Elias exhaled slowly. "Then we do it. On our terms, not theirs." The next day, word spread across the city. The princess and the human envoy would complete the ancient bonding ritual before the people. The palace square filled with thousands. Elias stood beside Vera on the raised platform. She wore the traditional bonding attire, simple white cloth, unadorned except for a silver circlet. He wore a plain tunic, stripped of rank insignia. The High Sovereign stepped forward, speaking for all to hear, before a stand to leaders who choose unity over division, trust over fear. Let this bond mark the start of a new age. He gestured for them to face each other. Vera's voice was steady. "Elias Ward, will you stand with me, without barriers, without lies, until our peoples are one in peace?" "I will, Elias," said he, replied with a human vow. "Vera of the Ralthari, will you stand with me, through every trial, until peace is as natural as breath?" "I will," she said. They touched foreheads, the final step of the ritual. The crowd roared, voices echoing across the square. In that moment, Elias knew the council had lost their last easy move against him. Now, to attack him meant attacking the princess, the bond, and the people's hope for peace. But as he looked into Vera's golden eyes, he also knew something else. This wasn't just politics anymore, and the real fight was still ahead. Morning broke sharp and clear over the alien capital. The crystal towers caught the first light and sent it flashing across the city. The palace square was already crowded. Word had spread overnight Lord Kirith would face judgment in open court, accused of trying to destroy the treaty and kill both the human envoy and the princess. Captain Elias Ward stood in the waiting chamber with Princess Vera. She wore the white tan-silver cloak of the royal house. Her golden eyes were calm but hard, like sunlight on steel. Elias adjusted his uniform, feeling the weight of the day. "This is it," she said. "If we fail today, the treaty may fall. If we succeed, they will never touch it again." Elias nodded. "Then let's make it a success." 2 guards opened the tall double doors. The sound of the crowd poured in like a wave. They walked side by side into the great hall, where the high sovereign sat on the raised throne. Ministers filled the semicircle around him. Citizens stood beyond, pressed close to the walls. At the center, under heavy guard, stood Lord Kirith. His silver eyes met Elias's with a cold, flat stare. He looked unafraid. But Elias knew that could be part of the game. The sovereign's voice cut through the air. "Lord Kirith, you stand accused of treason against the Ralthri Empire and crimes against peace. You are charged with plotting to kill Captain Elias Ward, human envoy, and Princess Vera, heir to the throne. How do you answer?" Kirith's voice was smooth. "I answer with the truth. I did not order any attack. These charges are lies created by those who wish to weaken our defenses. The human is here to bind us in chains." Shouts broke out in the hall, some in his defense, others against him. The sovereign raised his hand for silence. "Then we will hear the evidence." Vera stepped forward first. "I stand here alive only because Captain Ward saved me from a blade meant for my neck. That attacker served in the 4th Fleet, Kirith's fleet. We have his statement." He named Kirith and 2 ministers as those who ordered the strike. Kirith's eyes narrowed. "The word of a single prisoner is worth nothing." Elias took a step forward. "Not a single prisoner. 3 others have been caught. 3 who carried your fleet's signal codes. 3 who had orders matching your fleet's battle encryption." A murmur rippled through the ministers. Encryption codes were not things handed out lightly. One of the sovereign's aides brought forward a crystal tablet. It glowed with lines of text and voice records, all tied to Kirith's command codes. The aide read aloud messages about removing the human and ending the princess's foolishness. Kirith laughed once, sharp. "Fabrications, made to destroy me." The high sovereign leaned forward. "Do you deny these are your codes?" Kirith's jaw tightened. "I do." The sovereign turned to a tech officer in ceremonial armor. "Are these codes verified?" "They are," the officer said firmly. "There is no doubt." A loud, angry murmur rose from the crowd. The tide was shifting. Even those who had doubted the treaty now saw that the attack was not about defense. It was about power. Kirith's composure cracked. His voice rose. "Yes, I ordered it. But I did it for our people. The humans will take from us. They will weaken us. I acted before it was too late." Vera's voice was like a blade. "You acted for yourself. You feared peace would end your profits from war. You feared unity would end your power. You did not act for our people, acted to own them." Kirith's eyes flicked to the crowd. Some faces turned away from him. Others stared in silence. Anger. Elias spoke next, his tone steady. "I have fought Ralthri ships. I have seen the dead on both sides. I will not pretend humans are perfect. But I am here to end the killing. Kirith would rather spill more blood than share power. That is not leadership, it is greed." The sovereign rose to his full height. His voice thundered across the hall. "Lord Kirith, you are guilty of treason, of dishonoring your fleet, and of trying to murder my child and our ally. You will be stripped of your title and command. You will be exiled to the outlands. May you never again have the power to harm this world. The guards moved in. Kirith did not fight. He held his head high as they led him away, but his silence told Elias what he needed to know. He had lost, and he knew it. The hall was still for a long moment. Then the sovereign spoke again. "Let it be known, the treaty stands. The bond between our people stands. Those who break it will answer to both thrones." Applause and cheers swelled until the crystal walls seemed to hum. Citizens raised banners with both the human and Ralthri emblems side by side. The sound rolled out into the city streets. Vera turned to Elias. "It's done. For now," Elias said. "But we'll have to defend it every day." "Yes," she agreed. "But now we defend it together." That night, a celebration filled the palace square. Lanterns floated in the air, glowing like warm stars. Musicians played songs from both worlds. Food stalls gave away dishes from both cultures. Children ran between the legs of guards who didn't bother to stop them. Elias and Vera walked through the crowd without guards for the first time since he'd arrived. People stepped forward to thank them, to offer flowers, to bow in respect. An older Ralthri woman pressed a small crystal into Elias's hand. "For luck," she said, "and for courage." A young human soldier, part of the peace delegation, saluted Vera. "Ma'am, I never thought I'd see this day." "You helped make it," she told him. They ended the night on the balcony above the square. The twin moons hung low, and the city glowed with the light of celebration. From here, Elias could see both the old war memorial and the new monument built that morning, a tall crystal spire with the emblems of both peoples at its peak. Vera rested her hands on the railing. "When I came to your room that first night, I thought you might be a fool or a liar. Instead, you became something I did not expect." Elias smiled slightly. "And when I found you in my room that first night, I thought you might be a trap. Instead, you became my best ally." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the music and the distant cheers. Vera glanced at him. "Do you regret it?" "The bond?" "Not for a second," Elias said. "It was the only way to make peace real. And it's not a bad deal. For me either." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good, because in my culture, there is no untying it." "I know," Elias said, "and I'm fine with that." Below them, the people danced and sang. The air was filled with hope, fragile but real. Two leaders stood together, not just as symbols, but as partners bound by choice, forged in danger, and ready for whatever came next. The war was over. The peace had begun. And for the first time in years, both worlds looked toward the same horizon. Captain Elias Ward stood in the waiting chamber with Princess Vera. She wore the white and silver cloak of the royal house. Her golden eyes were calm but hard, like sunlight on steel. Elias adjusted his uniform, feeling the weight of the day. "This is it," she said. "If we fail today, the treaty may fall. If we succeed, they will never touch it again." Elias nodded. "Then let's make it a success." Two guards opened the tall double doors. The sound of the crowd poured in like a wave. They walked side by side into the great hall, where the High Sovereign sat on the raised throne. Ministers filled the semicircle around him. Citizens stood beyond, pressed close to the walls. At the center, under heavy guard, stood Lord Kirith. His silver eyes met Elias's with a cold, flat stare. He looked unafraid. But Elias knew that could be part of the game. The sovereign's voice cut through the air. "Lord Kirith, you stand accused of treason against the Ralthri Empire and crimes against peace. You are charged with plotting to kill Captain Elias Ward, human envoy, and Princess Vera, heir to the throne. How do you answer?" Kirith's voice was smooth. "I answer with the truth. I did not order any attack. These charges are lies created by those who wish to weaken our defenses. The human is here to bind us in chains. Shouts broke out in the hall, some in his defense, others against him. The sovereign raised his hand for silence. Then we will hear the evidence. Vera stepped forward first. I stand here alive only because Captain Ward saved me from a blade meant for my neck. That attacker served in the 4th Fleet, Kirith's fleet. We have his statement. He named Kirith and 2 ministers as those who ordered the strike. Kirith's eyes narrowed. The word of a single prisoner is worth nothing. Elias took a step forward, not a single prisoner. 3 others have been caught. 3 who carried your fleet's signal codes. 3 who had orders matching your fleet's battle encryption. A murmur rippled through the ministers. Encryption codes were not things handed out lightly. One of the sovereign's aides brought forward a crystal tablet. It glowed with lines of text and voice records, all tied to Kirith's command codes. The aide read aloud messages about removing cicaders. Only Ruby Kiss has the luxurious texture that glides on smoothly and leaves a wretch long lask. A salide in salad. It with lines. It's so wise, tied. It is so wide, like it, my melies. My salide shf, my me live. Pays. Key to subwide. It's a side. By malib. De quatip id qual I bekrat you see it sil lis ikaka clip you sizeka credi greeka pud you lets sick get a dith right eye typically akata you get and the human and ending the princess's foolishness. Kirith laughed once, sharp fabrications, made to destroy me. The high sovereign leaned forward. Do you deny these are your codes? Kirith's jaw tightened. I do. The sovereign turned to a tech officer in ceremonial armor. Are these codes verified? They are, the officer said firmly. There is no doubt. A loud, angry murmur rose from the crowd. The tide was shifting. Even those who had doubted the treaty now saw that the attack was not about defense. It was about power. Kirith's composure cracked. His voice rose. Yes, I ordered it. But I did it for our people. The humans will take from us. They will weaken us. I acted before it was too late. Vera's voice was like a blade. You acted for yourself. You feared peace would end your profits from war. You feared unity would end your power. You did not act for our people, you acted to own them. Kirith's eyes flicked to the crowd. Some faces turned away from him. Others stared in silence. Anger. Elias spoke next, his tone steady. I have fought Raltheri ships. I have seen the dead on both sides. I will not pretend humans are perfect, but I am here to end the killing. Kirith would rather spill more blood than share power. That is not leadership, is greed. The sovereign rose to his full height. His voice thundered across the hall. Lord Kirith, you are guilty of treason, of dishonoring your fleet, and of trying to murder my child and our ally. You will be stripped of your title and command. You will be exiled to the outlands. May you never again have the power to harm this world. The guards moved in. Kirith did not fight. He held his head high as they led him away, but his silence told Elias what he needed to know. Kirith had lost, and he knew it. The hall was still for a long moment. Then the sovereign spoke again. Let it be known, the treaty stands. The bond between our people stands. Those who break it will answer to both thrones. Applause and cheers swelled until the crystal walls seemed to hum. Citizens raised banners with both the human and Raltheri emblems side by side. The sound rolled out into the city streets. Vera turned to Elias. It's done. For now, Elias said. But we'll have to defend it every day. Yes, she agreed. But now we defend it together. That night, a celebration filled the palace square. Lanterns floated in the air, glowing like warm stars. Musicians played songs from both worlds. Food stalls gave away dishes from both cultures. Children ran between the legs of guards who didn't bother to stop them. Elias and Vera walked through the crowd without guards for the first time since he'd arrived. People stepped forward to thank them, to offer flowers, to bow in respect. An older Ralthri woman pressed a small crystal into Elias's hand. For luck, she said, and for courage. A young human soldier, part of the peace delegation, saluted Vera. Ma'am, I never thought I'd see this day. You helped make it, she told him. They ended the night on the balcony above. The square? The twin moons hung low, and the city glowed with the light of celebration. From here, Elias could see both the old war memorial and the new monument built that morning, a tall crystal spire with the emblems of both peoples at its peak. Vera rested her hands on the railing. When I came to your room that first night, I thought you might be a fool or a liar. Instead, you became something I did not expect. Elias smiled slightly. And when I found you in my room that first night, I thought you might be a trap. Instead, you became my best ally. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the music and the distant cheers. Vera glanced at him. Do you regret it? The bond? Not for a second, Elias said. It was the only way to make peace real. And it's not a bad deal. For me either. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Good, because in my culture, there is no untying it. I know, Elias said, and I'm fine with that. Below them, the people danced and sang. The air was filled with hope. Fragile but real, two leaders stood together. Not just as symbols, but as partners bound by choice, forged in danger and ready for whatever came next. The war was over. The peace had begun. And for the first time in years, both worlds looked toward the same horizon.